So EA kicked off E3 with their press conference on Saturday, and I came in with one expectation really, that being Skate 4, which wasn't revealed or announced or anything, which I was a bit disappointed about, but it is what it is, so move on. Um, they started out with Battlefield 5, which releases October 19th. The big points from that was that everything was more destructible, but things can also be reinforced. You can move previously unmovable guns like AA guns and AT guns. There's no loot box or season pass, and they also revealed they're going to have a battle royale mode, which was really expected. I'm surprised we didn't see more of these announced, um, just because it's been such a trend in the past year or so. I think it would have been a good place for a lot of companies to announce this. I know uh, Black Ops 4 is going to have one, but that wasn't shown off at E3 really. After that, they had FIFA 19, which is just another sports iteration, nothing big. Then they did something kind of interesting, which was they talked a lot about cloud-based games. They showed somebody playing on their phone, then their TV, then the computer, and it was all the same game. I don't. I'm not. I'm curious to find out more about it, but I'm not super hyped for it just because I don't know how it's gonna work exactly. They didn't go into too many details. Then they talked about Origin Access Premier, which is a they already have Origin Access. Origin Access Premier lets people play new games like on that service right away as they launch, and it also provides a back catalog of games that are available at any time, kind of like Game Pass, I think that Xbox has. Um, then they went. Then they touched on a new Star Wars game, Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order from Respawn, who did the Titanfall games, which I think could be interesting considering you're going to be playing as a Jedi. I don't know how that'll work exactly, but they didn't reveal too much because it's set for 2019. But they did say it takes place between episodes 3 and 4, more likely towards 3 because you're playing as a Jedi and it's when the Jedi are being hunted down. Then they talked about Battlefront 2. They really fessed up to everything, like all the stuff that went down with that game when it launched. They said that the loot crates and in-game purchases were a bad idea, basically. Even though but they were smart and took them out fast enough before the game even launched in the play before release on digital copies. But then they went into the solo season. They're introducing Kessel, uh, from the movie Solo, squads, and escort and dogfight modes. The dogfight modes, I believe, are between hero ships for the most part, and then escort actually launched this morning, the 13th, the day of recording this. Um, and they also announced we're getting Clone Wars content soon, which I thought was really nice of them to put out there. We're getting General Grievous, Count Dooku, Obi-Wan, and Anakin, all as playable heroes in Geonosis maps. But I thought they might reveal a bit more, but they didn't. That was it. Um, I'm really hoping for more Clone Wars content. Maybe someone like Ahsoka as a playable hero and Asajj Ventress as a playable villain. I think that'd be smart of them to put out there. Um, that's it for that. So after Battlefront, they went into Unravel 2, which they revealed. No one really knew it was happening. They announced it. They announced it's going to be a co-op game, and that you could. They were doing a live demo. You could definitely see that they were enjoying the game. They enjoyed the game they made, and then they just dropped the game. It's available to play today, right now. Which I think is really nice. EA really needs something right now. They're kind of in the middle of a dead zone. They don't have anything big until Battlefield 5, which I think is smart of them to drop a game like that. Something everyone will enjoy. Then after that, they went into Sea of Solitude, which it seemed like kind of a horror game, like a horror adventure game, but they didn't reveal too much about it. Just main themes of like being alone and how that can bring out demons and stuff. And then they went into the sports games, Madden and NBA Live, nothing big. And then they had a 10 a 5 probably a 10-minute demo of a mobile game, which turned out to be Command and Conquer Rivals, a new Command and Conquer game. But it was really pointless to have a 10-minute mobile game demo going on in the middle of the biggest press conference you're going to have all year. Um, it was literally just a shoutcaster that was brought out and started announcing the game, basically. And it was really stupid and awkward. There was no real place for it. They could have shown it for a minute or two. Just say, hey, this is what the game is. But I don't know. They could have announced a proper Command and Conquer alongside it, but they didn't. Then they went into Anthem. I thought Anthem looked really interesting. I didn't care much for it last year, just because they didn't show off anything really. But seeing the gameplay, it makes me kind of interested, but not really. It's made by BioWare, who did the Mass Effect games, and to me it reminds me of kind of Titanfall with Titan combat mixed with Destiny combat, um, which I think they're going for a pretty Destiny-like game with how multiplayer missions are. So they're PVE. I think there is a PvP section as well, but it's PvE multiplayer like campaign story missions, and then they're making it so that the hub world where you can accept missions and go out on missions is just single player, which I don't really understand because the tower is one of my favorite parts of Destiny, which is the hub world basically, and you're taking away like one of the most fun parts about that, which is interacting with other people. They had a weird Q&A section going on throughout the gameplay that they showed, and they showed one final trailer. It didn't seem. It was just kind of awkward to have that Q&A section there. But overall, I think EA had a pretty good press conference. Not bad. I would have liked to have seen Skate 4, but it is what it is. Okay, so Bethesda started off with a weird little documentary about like their company and how diverse they are. I didn't care for that too much. Then they brought out an executive from Bethesda just to talk a little bit. And then they brought out Andrew WK to introduce Rage, which I thought was really interesting. It felt kind of awkward and out of place just because it didn't show any real gameplay while he was performing. Um, but it was a cool performance. I definitely enjoyed that. I just wish they had had some gameplay going on in the background. And then they showed a proper trailer and gameplay of Rage 2, but it felt kind of bland to me. Like in the open world, you can drive any car you see, but the open world felt empty just from the trailer. They have the car chases that you can hunt down other cars with, but it wasn't anything too big. It was just kind of there, um, which I'm not. It seems kind of weird. Then they went into gameplay, which looked pretty repetitive to me, honestly. It's just the shooting and stuff. The dash looked kind of nice, but other than that, it didn't really look too great. Just because it seems like it could be such a bigger, like over the top game, kind of like how Bulletstorm and Borderlands are, but they didn't really go into that too much. They just kind of let it go on. And then they had an ad for their deluxe edition right in the middle of the trailer that they showed, which I thought was kind of weird. But I don't know, it's whatever. So that's basically it for Rage 2. That's all they really showed. Just pretty repetitive gameplay. That's it. And then they went into Elder Scrolls Legends, which is their card game that they have for the Elder Scrolls franchise. Um, they announced that they're releasing it for Xbox One, PS4, and the Switch. I think it could be really cool on the Switch just to have it on the go on a bigger screen than just your phone. They also announced they're overhauling the graphics completely, so it'll be a bit more aesthetically pleasing, a bit more going on screen other than just the cards themselves out there. Then they went into Elder Scrolls Online, which I thought was kind of eh. They talked about their Somerset DLC they recently released, and they announced Wolf Hunter, a dungeon-based werewolf themed DLC, and then Murkmire, which is a story-based DLC. Um, that was really all they had for that game. And after that, they showed a trailer that looked like it was Hell on Earth, literally. And they came out and said, "Hey, this is Hell on Earth. This is Doom Eternal, a game with 2 times more demons to slay, basically." And that's all they really said for Doom Eternal, just because QuakeCon is coming up, and they said they're gonna debut actual gameplay at QuakeCon, and that's in August. So no more info on that till then. But speaking of Quake, they went into Quake Champions, and Quake Champions is they made a free-to-play beta before launch. It still hasn't launched yet, but you can buy it technically and play it. But it's a free-to-play version. Sign up on their site. That's it, basically. And then after that, they went into Prey. Prey is a game I thought was really interesting, but I didn't get to play it. I saw some gameplay, but it looked fun. They announced they're adding a New Game Plus mode that was available that day when they announced it. And then they also added a survival mode. And then they announced the Moon Crash DLC, where you have to escape from the moon. And it seemed like a roguelike game, basically, just because every run is different. Every enemy is placed differently, and every weapon is different, basically. That's basically it for that. I believe that's actually available right now, though. They dropped it then. And then they announced Typhon Hunter, which is essentially prop hunt in the game. They announced a prop hunt mode where it's 1 hunter and 5 mimics. And that'll actually be available in VR, which I think is really smart of them to differentiate their version of prop hunt from other versions. After that, they went into Wolfenstein 2, which they announced for the Switch. And then they announced Wolfenstein Youngblood, which is a new standalone game that follows B.J. Blazkowicz's daughters as they're growing up in 1980s Paris. It's a co-op game, and it's a standalone sequel, but I don't know if it's technically a sequel. It is, but it's not mainline. It's not Wolfenstein 3, but it is coming out. Then Todd Howard came out and just kind of stole the show. He did a comedy bit where just talked about E3 and how old and how long it's been going. And then they announced Skyrim very special edition for the Amazon Alexa, which actually is real. They also announced in the future it'll be available on an Etch-a-Sketch, pager, and your Samsung smart fridge. I honestly think this is hilarious. They brought out Keegan-Michael Key, which is huge, and it's actually available for the Amazon Alexa, which I thought was incredible. It's really smart marketing on their part, and it's free. As long as you have an Alexa, you can just enable it on Amazon.com. And I thought that was genius. Then they went to Fallout 76. It's a prequel to the other games. That's what they announced. And it's actually it's 4 times as big as Fallout 4. And Fallout 4 was, I believe Fallout New Vegas and Fallout 3 were both bigger than Fallout 4. I think Fallout 3 is the biggest Fallout game being like 19% bigger than Fallout 4, but so this one will be bigger than every other Fallout game, basically. And then they announced that it was actually going to be a multiplayer Fallout game, which I thought was really interesting and smart of them because we haven't had a multiplayer Fallout game ever. Um, but yeah, so that's that. And then they announced that some of the new enemies you'll be finding are actually based in Virginian folklore. So there was um, a giant sloth enemy that looked really cool. A spider with what looked to be a bee's nest on its back, and a third creature I can't remember super well. Um, but the multiplayer, it's not going to be big multiplayer. It's small multiplayer, so it's like a few dozen per server on a huge map, and you can have squads of 4, and you can build bases together, which can actually be moved. I'm not sure how that'll work exactly. Then then there's nuclear missile sites where you can launch nuclear missiles from, which I thought was really interesting. It's kind of weird though because I don't know how that's actually going to affect the game. They said that the Fallout areas will have new new resources and new enemies, but I'm not sure exactly how it'll work um, in such a big game, basically. And then after that, they went into Elder Scrolls Blades, which is a mobile game, which I thought looked pretty decent for a mobile game. It doesn't look like trash. There's going to be 3 different game modes: Abyss, which is endless dungeon; Arena, PvP; and the Town, which is basically your hub for quests, and your town will grow as you do more quests. So it's Elder Scrolls Blades. It's available for pre-order. It's a mobile game, but that was basically it for that. Then they went into Starfield, which is they copyrighted it a year or 2 ago. I can't remember exactly when they did it, but they teased it. That's it. That's all they really did. But it's from Bethesda, so we can kind of assume it's going to be a space-based RPG, so a space Fallout or a space Skyrim. Probably more like Fallout, just because of the futuristicness of it. But space RPG game looks really cool. Didn't really see anything, but from the logo we saw, it looks cool. And then after that, they went and teased Elder Scrolls 6, which I thought was really weird considering how far in advance that must be. They announced that it's going to be a next-gen game, and we still have at least 2 years before new next-gen consoles really launch. I mean, we're probably going to get an announcement for new consoles next year, but it's so far in advance, I'm surprised they teased it now. Could be because they saw EA's conference and how they did Command and Conquer and didn't announce a mainline game for it, but it is what it is. And then they ended. I thought they had a really good press conference. I thought it was really smart of them just to do what they did. And yeah, so we'll see you guys next time.